Hi, friends. I'm Jean Thomason. Today, I'm super excited in the studio to have with me Dan and Cynthia, and they are going to talk to us about a new series that's available on PureFlix, and it is from Affirm Originals, and it's called Going Home. And just before we even start, I just want to say already I've watched 2 episodes, and so tender, so touching, many tears from me already because I'm in that world with elderly parents. So, Dan and Cynthia, welcome. We're so excited to talk to you about this. And Dan, I just want to ask you, tell me how this happened and how you had the idea to begin this whole project.
It's hard to explain where ideas come from. And this was one of those special ones where one minute it's not there and the next minute it is. And it almost seemed like such a great idea. Honestly, I don't want to take credit for it because it just kind of popped and just went, wow, that would hospice nurses, that would make a great show. Have I seen that before? There must be a show. No, couldn't find one and went, okay, what would it be? What would a show look like? What would this show be? Um, Clearly, the idea hatched in the midst of the pandemic. So clearly, mortality was on my mind, and I had a parent, my one remaining parent, going through cancer at the time. So that mortality marker was also there. And my dad actually even passed away during the filming of the show. So it's sort of like um, I feel like in life when you're prepared, you're getting prepared for something. As a creative person, this is kind of how it manifests with me. So it was a beautiful thing that the idea hatched, and then you go to work and kind of go, okay, let me figure out how to make this a show. But it was one of those blessings that just if one day it's not there and the next day it is.
That's amazing. And Cynthia, people will recognize your face because you've been around the world of screen, television, and some movies. And so I know you went home to be a mommy and a wife and mom. And what was it that brought you back to acting? And how did you get prepared for this role?
Well, I stayed in Seattle after Northern Exposure and kept my home here and raised children. And you're right, that my family came first. I was really fortunate to have parents who instilled that in us. I mean, I am the youngest of 4 kids, and my mom cooked a hot breakfast every morning, and we'd sit at the dinner table, even like when my brothers and sisters were in high school and had tons of activities. We had to sit down at the table. My dad would read devotional, and then we went to school. And so that's just how I was raised. And we had dinner together every night. We had lunch on Sundays with my cousins. So when I wanted to have children, I wanted to be involved, and I needed to volunteer in their classrooms and be involved in the PTA. And so that was, it wasn't really even a choice. That's what I wanted to do. And I never quit acting. I've been doing theater in the Seattle area where I live and continue to do small things, just not at the level that I was doing it before. I just couldn't do that and be available to my children and be in their classrooms. But when Dan and Rich Cowan, another producer, sent me this script, I mean, Dan says the idea just popped in his head, and this just dropped in my lap, and I'm like, it was such a perfect, beautifully well written script. They sent me several, and I put it down, picked up the phone, and said, "Yes, I want to do it." And I auditioned for it, and I was lucky. They picked me.
Wow.
We're,
So,
I was going to say, John, just real quick, or Gene, we're real comfortable with the idea that the right people showed up to this party, and there was a number of kind of strange little serendipities, and one of the writers in the writers' room was my wife, who's a marathon runner, and so that's one of our pet peeves in TV shows and movies is actors who can't run or don't run. And you always look at an actor's head sheet. They've got this thing called special skills where equestrian riding and I speak Czechoslovakian, and none of it's ever true. None of it.
I know that because I've put like it was like ice skating. Yeah, I could probably ice skate, and I'm like, no, don't do it. When they ask you to do the double axel, it'll all fall apart.
So as you know from the show, one of the character traits that we wrote for Charlie, Cynthia's character, is that she runs to work. She runs from her personal life to the hospice world, and it's sort of a symbolic transition for her to run to and from. And we thought about how bad that could be if there's an actor who doesn't run. And Cynthia had already bowled us over with the audition, and there was just some weird, vague things about how she just looked like we thought. We've been talking about this Charlie character for 3 months in the writer's room, and then when Cynthia entered the picture, we go, it's kind of weird. Cynthia looks like Charlie, doesn't she? And she didn't exist until Cynthia showed up, but just she felt right, and then did such a great read. And then just as we're having a casual conversation, she mentions that she runs 3 to 4 miles every morning with her dog, who's named Charlie. And we just thought that now it's just getting weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how the Lord just puts things together, and he's just the master of details. I mean, he numbers the hairs on her head, so he cares about every tiny little thing. So that's so much fun, especially because it's confirming for us,
I was grateful he was so obvious. Sometimes he makes me work harder, but he was beautifully obvious on the Going Home project.
So I have a question. I know I read that you went to the hospital in Spokane and you followed the nurses around, or just observing. Did you both do that? So for writing and for acting?
Yeah.
Well, I'll let Dan speak.
Okay.
He spent a lot more time than I did. I was fortunate to be able to meet them, but Dan really spent the time there.
The deeper into the project we got, the writers in the writers' room, Matt Michelatos and my wife Kara and myself, we'd all had our separate and collective experiences with hospice nurses, and we kind of had an idea of that we were being accurate and we wanted to honor these people. But we got about a month into the development of the idea and went, well, we really have to be right about this. And so I reached out to a hospice in Spokane and had a chance to meet with their director and kind of the head of communications and the head of nursing and the head of social work. And there's 4 or 5 people, I think, in that very first meeting. And I said, look, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're thinking about. Here's the stories. And here's our questions. And they were so generous. They probably spent 2 hours with me that day and then invited me along. So I got to go hang out at the Hospice of Spokane. They would hook me up with different nurses to follow around and to tag around with, and kind of not in a way that I was ever, between them and their patients or their clients, as they call them. But I had a chance to really kind of observe and understand the space. And we sent the scripts to them as we, finished writing them. And, hey, does this look right? Or here's this. And they recognized that there's a lot of stuff in the show that came directly from comments that the nurses gave or stories that they told that we maybe composited with something else that we had going. And then right before we were, starting our principal photography, I was able to bring Cynthia down, and we got to spend part of a day, several hours, as I recall, sitting with a couple of the head nurses. And there was one particular nurse who kind of ran the particular of this operation, this particular facility, who kind of reminded me of, she was the closest one to our character. So there were some traits that she had that I had written into the show. And so it was fun to watch Cynthia sit and visit with this nurse and ask her questions and just kind of pick up her vibe a little bit. It was very interesting to watch the actor. I'm the writer, I do my thing, but it was cool to watch the actor do her thing.
I loved the moment, Cynthia, where when you walked to the room, and I'm thinking of 104, and you always put your hand on the doorknob, and then you close your eyes and you take a deep breath. Talk to me about what you were thinking when you did that.
Well, I have to give credit where credit's due. That was in the script. Dan wrote that in the script, and I think it's a beautiful moment. And I mean, the thought process is the room is a sacred place, and when Charlie enters that room, I mean, she is present and wants to glean what is needed by the client and the family and the people in the room, and she wants to give them, and everybody needs something different what they need, and she takes that moment to get in the zone,
Right.
to prepare herself.
I loved the way that you wrote in the character of Charlie her experience with her own grandmother and how that seemed to shape what just her future and some of her destiny. Tell us about that idea.
Yeah, that was really interesting because that's a pretty much true story that my wife tells of being able to sit and have this quiet time with her own grandmother who had suffered a serious stroke at a certain point, and she would sit and read to her grandma, and so Kara was describing that in the room one day, and I just kind of went, okay, let's see about how that could fit in with this, and maybe that's a little backstory, and we couple that with, again, this is where research and inspiration and your own life experiences kind of all collide, because one of the things that the hospice nurses spoke a lot about was being able to feel peace tangibly in the room at the time of somebody's departure from this world. And on one hand, it's like the weirdest thing you can describe. And on the other hand, if you've ever been around it, you go, oh yeah, no, completely know what you're talking about. And I, had a chance to experience it with one of my grandparents personally myself. And we'd walked into the room about 10 minutes after they had passed. And there's the stillness that's in that moment that just isn't like any other kind of stillness. So being able to take that and the terrific young actor from Spokane who played young Charlie to kind of recreate that moment, and to, Charlie later on in the series, you hear her talk about that a little bit more, even about just knowing that a good death, as they call it, as we call it, and the hospice nurses call it, that a good death is a real thing, that it's something that can be achieved. She knows it because she's already experienced it in her life.
Chris and I have, my husband and I've been in the music industry for a lot of years. One of our dear friends wrote and sings a song called Homesick for Eden. And as I was watching one of these, I was thinking of the lyrics of the song, which just says, all of us are homesick for Eden. We yearn to return to a land we've never seen. And I felt like that sort of says exactly what you say over and over, which is we are going to walk you home. And
Yeah.
so I felt like that was, if I had one takeaway, I was like, this is the way to walk someone home. So my question to you is, what do you hope your viewers what would you hope their takeaway is?
Well, I hope viewers, I hope they love it and feel like we did, but I I hope that it really gets them thinking about death in a new way, maybe, and about what's important about having those conversations with loved ones, maybe before they're in hospice, and how important that is, and just your relationships in general. I mean, I hopefully they'll watch these shows and go, you know, well, we're not here forever, and maybe it's time to bury the hatchet and resolve issues, and just spend time talking and being present with the people you love.
No,
So good.
that's great. You hit the big things there. I love the show because it's messy, and
Me too.
not everybody. Charlie's not perfect. Janie's not perfect. Catherine's not perfect. None of the characters. Nobody's perfect because nobody's perfect. So why create that fantasy? Uh, and so I love the messiness of it, and I want that to be inviting to the audience because anybody who's got a family knows what a mess looks like, right? And anybody who's married knows what a hard day looks like. And anybody who's got kids knows how challenging and complicated that can be. So the reality is, and it turns out, and we had this, Cynthia had similar experiences, I'm sure, with cast and crew and guests and extras and people coming up. And because we created this space with this show to talk about death, to talk about these scenarios, everybody had a story. And it turns out it's the most relatable show we've ever worked on. We just didn't know it was going to be when we started it.
Well, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being listening to the Lord, who obviously gave you this great idea, and for working to find the right people and to deal with this very sensitive and yet profoundly important subject. Please tell our viewers how they can watch Going Home.
So it's on the streaming service PureFlix, so pureflix.com. It's an app. I have it on my iPad and my phone and Roku, and lots of ways to stream it on smart TVs. But yeah, it's like Netflix in that respect. It's an application. They've got thousands of shows. Sony bought PureFlix a couple of years ago, so there's a ton of great Sony content on there now too. I mean, I just watched Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and The Queen with Helen Mirren, and Going Home is the #1 streaming series on PureFlix right this minute.
Congratulations!
Oh, and I have to say, the first week you could sign up for a week for free, and a month of PureFlix is $8.
Incredible.
It's a deal.
It is. And we promise more than $8 worth of entertainment if you watch Going.
Right.
We don't stop at $8. We keep going. It might be $9.50, maybe $10 of entertainment. No, we didn't stop.
That's great. Thank you so much. We are honored to get to talk to you. So excited to get to find out just the way that God is using your efforts, and may He continue to bless you and open more doors, give you more and more chances to tell the story that all of us are homesick for Eden, and we're going to go home. And thank you for the way that you're showing how even though if we're not hospice nurses in our own lives, might have a chance to one day walk someone home. We appreciate your time. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Cynthia. God bless y'all.
Thanks, Jean.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you, Jean. Take care.